Hello, Facebook and YouTube. How are you guys on a Friday? I brought a very special person. You guys seen her everywhere. Especially, she's like my Twitter buddy, especially when we're trying to advocate online and trying to educate our elected officials on what's actually happening in today's market with landlording, our tenants, the housing crisis, policies, landlord licensing, you name it. But tonight, Michele is going to give you a quick introduction of who she is before we dive deep into what's happening at the Landlord and Tenant Board. I know it's collapsed, but let's dive deep into what these hearings are all about and what to expect. Michele, thanks so much for taking time out of your vacation to jump on a Facebook Live with us.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure. It's
I
always a
know
pleasure.
I know we got everyone has gotten very familiar with your stance on the government, but at the same time, in your off time of what you do, you are watching hearings. Give us first go into. I put it in the description of where Michele is all about, but give us a little bit of a bio of who you are.
So I've been a landlord for, oh gosh, 27, probably more years. I started off by, even before I became a landlord, just having roommates. And that's how I purchased my first place when I was 23. And then a couple of years after that, I saved up money by having roommates and paying for my mortgage and, working 60 to 80 hours a week. And then I was able to purchase another home. And this is all before computers because I'm like 100 years old. So so what happened was I lied to the first mortgage holder and said, "Oh, no, 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 I've sold that place. Like it's going to be sold. Like it's up for sale." And that's how I bought the second one. And of course, the first one never sold because it was never for sale and they never checked and they gave me a mortgage for the second one. Because back then, being a government employee, I mean, you could pretty much get any mortgage.
Mm.
So yeah, so I fibbed. I fibbed, and that's how I got my place. And I kind of learned that you had to, in order to win the game, you can't always tell the truth, especially when it comes to the landlord and tenant board, because it's just a giant board game that he who lies best wins in the end.
Sadly, that's what's happening at the Landlord and Tenant Board. Even for when people think that, with the Residential Intensive Act and non-payment of rent, 14 days, and thinking you're going to get a hearing right away. But in reality, we went from 12 months to approximately 8 months. But even though you're
Yeah.
getting to the Landlord and Tenant Board at 8 months, that doesn't mean that you're going to get your eviction. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you're going to have a payment plan potentially, or they're going to adjourn it because they ran out of time.
Yeah. When you see 24 to 28 different files on the docket, how are you possibly going to do that in 6 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Because you never see them start right at 9 o'clock. Oh, they got to take names first. Oh, they got to have roll call. Oh, then they got to rhyme off the, all oh my God, what do you call all the rules and what you can and cannot do, and no recordings and no this and swear to tell the truth. And there's real consequences if you lie. You could be in trouble. Like, So,
Now, let's backtrack. So when you're getting into the Landlord and Tenant Board and you get your hearing, you get your paperwork. You're getting your paperwork before your hearing, informing you of these rules and regulations, where to sign in, and people are signing in. But once they get signed in, they're doing like a call out to make sure I see the landlords are there and the tenants are there, and they're making this imaginary checklist that people have checked in. But at the time when now they start going through the uncontested matters, and then they would go ahead and have to recall the people again, and they spend what, an hour and a half. I've taken part in these hearings, but an hour and a half it takes just
yeah,
to check people in. Now, are
yeah.
they doing that on purpose, or it's like you tell someone to be there at 9, if they're not there when they're called, when they actually get called, then that's an abandonment of the application, or the tenant didn't show. But again, the Landlord and Tenant Board is definitely wasting their time. So we recommend that there's no roll call in this. The tenants need to be there at 9 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But what are people experiencing there?
You're absolutely right. I don't understand why they can't do this an hour before so that at 9 o'clock, the adjudicator is ready to rock. Because the moderator, who should be doing this, I don't know why they're paying an adjudicator big bucks to do this. If they have a moderator who can do this, have everybody ready to go at 9 o'clock.
Hmm.
And they should have a B person who is dealing with uncontested matters.
Well, we've seen part where they do the check-ins and all of a sudden there's a glitch in the system and now they're checking for those people again before the hearing actually starts.
Yeah. Or all of a sudden you have an afternoon block. We're now already into the afternoon block because the morning block is done and they've done like, I don't know how many, because they cannot hear something from a morning block in an afternoon block because that has now ended. So then they have to reschedule all those people into scheduling abyss, which God knows when they're ever going to come up. And then what happens is the afternoon block starts. And then people are like, oh, I was trying to get into the morning block, but I couldn't. And I was not able to, my phone wasn't working. I had no minutes and blah, blah, blah. There's always excuses.
Yeah.
So I think it's a purposeful way of delay.
And again, if you go back onto what these applications are being heard at the Landlord and Tenant Board, number one application at the board is non-payment of rent. So why are we even having a hearing at the Landlord and Tenant Board to have something of why, even for one of our paralegals, Andrew, he just said that it took 4 hours for a hearing. One hearing, 4 hours, and it's for a simple non-payment of rent.
Because they have to go through all the accounting. They have to go for month. They have to go through the whole, updated sheets of all the payments. And it's a waste of, it's really a man hours waste.
It's on the form. You got the N4 application. You're filing your L1 application. You're filing your update application. All the evidence is there in front of them. It's just to the purpose of just as a delay tactic. Now I just had a phone call for a gentleman who his parents had a hearing in July 17th. And because they couldn't get to the hearing, they've started like asking some questions before around 3:30, quarter to 4. But the adjudicator said, sorry, I'm done at 4 o'clock. I can't hear your application. So we're going to have to adjourn this. And they still have not have their next court date. Like,
yeah, it's almost like they're reinventing the wheel over and over again. There's no change. There's no really measurable change that they're ever making.
yeah, it's they're
And,
not.
and telling people, hey, you have a right to a hearing. Everybody's like, well, I'm going to get my day in adjudication court and I'm going to be heard and it doesn't matter. I'm tired of hearing the N12 of, I don't think my landlord's going to move in.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't yet. How can you know? You haven't left yet, so they haven't had an opportunity to. Thinking it's not going to happen is not bad faith, and there should be some kind of accountability for that. And if you have any money owing, you should not even be able to file for anything.
Yep. That's exactly, if you look at the N12 and having their day in court, they're signing in affidavits, they're showing you the paperwork and submitting the evidence that the property had been sold. We're looking at a lot of situations happening at the board that is a slam dunk, but they still drag it out and delaying the hearings that need to be heard in a timely manner. And even there was a hearing that you got the order. I just spoke with this lady named Ann. She got the order saying that there was an eviction process. The tenant had filed for a stay. So they got a new hearing. And because the tenant had stated to the board that the previous adjudicator never listened to their evidence, and the evidence was a video of the landlord, obviously just the tenant just pissed them off. But now the landlord is yelling, you're out. My son's going to be moving into this place. And the second adjudicator end up retracting that eviction. And because that video of the landlord stating that you're going to be out and my son's going to be in, she took away the eviction that was granted to them already.
Yeah,
This
I have
is
no
real
words
life,
for
guys. Like, and we don't mean to scare people when you're looking at being in the landlord business, but this is all possibilities that could happen, and you need to be prepared for that with your evidence, making sure you're speaking up for yourself or your paralegal speaking up for yourself at the hearing, so that you don't allow these typical adjudicators, especially ones with no experience, being adjudicators. Oh my God! Now you got a story of an adjudicator that was like completely out to lunch.
Oh my God, there's so many of them. Please tell me which one was it? Was it no, just describe the situation. I'll know the adjudicator.
Which one was it? Was it
I've watched adjudicators
Was it
lead.
the one that the lady adjourned the hearing because the tenant was crying? Were you on that one?
Oh my God, yes. This was a person who clearly I have worked, with a lot of mental health, and I'm not trying to pick on mental health, but this person was definitely had mental health issues, not just mental health issue, mental illness issues, which then affected her mental health. And they had a landlord, and everything was they already started off by the adjudicator was not using the right pronouns and pronounced her legal name, which was on the lease, not the name that she wished to be addressed by. And the adjudicator is trying to explain, listen, it's because this is legal, so I have to go by what is on the lease. I will say it one time, and then I will call you by the name that you would like. And this person just went like, started crying and just went completely crazy. Actually walked away, walked off camera, so the adjudicator had to hold it down a few times and was crying so bad that nobody could understand what they were trying to say and was unable to like control themselves. And these adjudicators, through no fault of their own, are not trained to deal with this level of trying to get information from that person.
Yeah.
And I don't, this is not a situation where an adjudicator can really do that because, first of all, it's virtual. So it's not like they can say, well, hold on a minute, let me put you in a room with a mediator or talk to legal aid or whatever, because they couldn't even get to that point with that person.
Yeah, and it's to the point where like a lot of people try to mediate their situation, and sometimes
Yeah.
that's even backfiring, so they try to avoid going there. But a lot of our adjudicators need to be fully strict with what's happening, but you can tell their personal opinion and their personal work
Yeah.
experience is now infiltrated the landlord and tenant board and has that soft heart. Like, it's business. You need to be able to issue out an eviction based on what it is. But even when they're giving out their orders now, they're even asking if there's any children involved before they issue their order.
Yes, yes. I have witnessed an adjudicator ask a tenant repeatedly to explain, um, are your children, do they have any learning disabilities? Like lead them to tell them, well, yes, my children are both have an IEP and are at a specialized school, and this is only one of two in my area. And, if we have to move, then we have to go through the whole process again with another school and make it so
Oh yeah.
slanted that, hey, even though they don't do the rulings, which they should be doing right away,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's legally extremely difficult where they have to do some research, for some case law or something like that. But most of these things, they should be able to do a ruling on the spot, especially on an N4, especially on an N8, especially on an N12. If everything is on file, why not?
Oh, the evidence is submitted. The evidence is submitted.
Yeah,
We had a comment that was here with the original N4 does not have the full amount owing since it was a year has passed and maybe some payments have been made. That's why the update sheet is important to be given in
yeah,
before your hearing. So that gives the adjudicator some time to see, here are the payments. This is what is actually
yeah,
supposed to be discussed here today of what is going to be within the order. We obviously say the interest hasn't been paid. A lot of this stuff is a dispute resolution officer can actually be the person issuing a lot of these almost default orders. And I think they might be working into that this mandatory payment plan that has came out with Bill 97 in order to expedite some of these hearings so that it's the same process. They still got to apply for a stay, but at least you're getting that ball rolling a little bit quicker, especially since the payment plan has already went through the landlord and tenant relationship. It obviously failed. The landlord and tenant board is supposed to be the last resort. And I
yeah,
believe most of our landlords out there do try to work themselves with a payment plan with their tenant. I like to educate where they can find relief. So if they have any rent
yeah.
banks that are out there to help them, there's even a company out there right now to help tenants with first and last month's rent and also rent relief. So it's almost like a payday loan
Payday
situation.
loan.
not really a good model, but again, it's these are desperate times, and this is what we have to be exercising when we're working. So we expect the landlord and tenant board to look at the facts, not take their issues or their disabilities and leave it up to the private sector to accommodate these people based on what they have experienced in their life. There's obviously they even have local service managers on Navigate Tribunals Ontario. So if you're not paying your rent, it actually has a link. It'll pull up where they can actually go and seek legal advice or get rent
But
relief.
but I think it already starts with the non-payment of rent. It immediately starts with most adjudicators will say, "Tell me, how did this start? What happened for you to be behind in rent?" Well, then get the violins out because it's, well, my car stopped working, my bus pass I can't afford. There's always a death or a breakup or, all these regular life events that we've all had in
Mm-hmm.
our lives I lost my job. We've all had this.
Yeah.
Well, not me because I work for the government. You pretty much have to like kill people before they ever fire you. But um, not that I recommend that. I'm just saying, like, it's really extremely hard to get fired. I've tried, and it didn't work many times. But anyway,
Telling me we should be
so
getting out of real estate and getting a job with the government.
I don't yeah, cash for life. That's what they told me before it was even a famous statement, the cash for life, the lottery. No, it was working for the government.
Yeah.
But anyway, like it even starts then. We get the stories, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, like that's nice, but it's been 18 months that you haven't paid. And what is your plan now? Well, I plan on getting a job. It's always I'm gonna story. What about the land? Nobody ever says to the landlord, "Hey, you sap, what did you have to do?" Well, shit, I had to get a second job, and then my wife had to get a second job because, interest rates went up and we got to keep this thing going. And we're not only cash flow negative, but we also have to cover all the bills on this thing.
Yeah.
And but they don't listen. There is no cares are given for that. But you lost your job. Oh, you have your elderly father live with you. Oh my God, and your mother died. Oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, no, like I'm sorry to hear that you paid for a non-family member, like they were a family member, to live in your place for free
Mm-hmm.
for all this time.
Yeah.
And then then they get to the payment plan. Well, if you haven't paid any rent for anywhere from 12 to 18 months, which is not all that uncommon, you're looking at $15,000 to $35,000 anywhere there.
Yep.
Okay, that's almost like a car payment. Like it's almost like buying a car. And these people, if they can't pay rent in the first place, how's a payment plan going to work out to pay your rent going forward plus even more?
Mm-hmm.
You go to a bank and say, "Hey, I know I haven't paid my mortgage in 18 months, but I got a payment plan for you. I'm gonna get a job and I'm gonna pay you my mortgage payment plus extra. As soon as I get a job, that is." How is that even possible? Your bank would laugh at you.
I can see like a payment plan being where you see them making payments, they're trying to get caught
Yeah.
up. But when you're seeing zero amount, I don't understand why. And then you got to show proof for it, landlords. Like when you're communicating with your tenants and saying, here's your N4 application, you need to make payment arrangements with us. What kind of a payment arrangement can you make? If they completely avoid you, at least take that as a screenshot to send them as evidence. Say, hey, I already tried to work out a payment plan. But again, when you go back to the board, they're still trying to get the tenant to work at a payment plan. And it's literally, it could be 2 years in trying to do it. Now, I think it's a part where even if you put them on that payment plan for 2 years, you got to get that, I believe it was a section 78. We should have had Andrew or Samantha on with us. So section 78. So if you're a dollar late or a dollar
Day late, dollar short. Yeah.
late, then you can apply at the landlord and tenant board for a default order. So having these hearings and having these payment plans and just waiting for the tenant to default because they're granting a payment plan that's not even practical
Yeah.
for many. So how they're trying to make themselves look good, or are they doing this on purpose? Are they just making the private housing sector to be a social agency for the government with no compensation to the owners or care of how damaging it's doing to the private housing provider, and knowing that because of this experience, they're taking their rental out of the market. That's just for the
Yeah.
simple fact of just non-payment of rent.
Yeah.
So
When a
now we're going to
90
see an influx of N12s.
Yes, when a 92-year-old landlord cannot retire because he has to go into long-term care, he can no longer live on his own in his own house upstairs with a tenant downstairs, and they have to turn it into like an N13 to do the whole thing, to make it into one family, single family home again. And they cannot evict a tenant because, oh, they have children, but they need to sell that property in order to pay for the long-term care. Like, how do you say to someone, you got to remain a shoe salesman until you die?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's in business like that.
No.
It's almost like they're forcing them on us, like as family members. So I hope you like your tenants because they're family now, whether you like it or not. And
This
if
is,
they don't pay,
you're taking care of them.
yeah,
This
they're
is,
yours
and
for life.
remember back in the day, they say if you're getting into the landlord business, to make sure that you have enough money to sustain that property for 6 months.
Yes, yes.
It's
Oh,
It's not even that no more. It's
yeah,
literally you have every duty to accommodate, and then they wonder why there's such a shortage when the landlords are cashing out of Ontario out of long-term housing and getting into student housing, short-term rentals. They're turning their
yeah,
units in just storage.
yeah,
Just so that they avoid renting, because they know that a lot of the rules and regulations are there just to protect the tenants.
yeah. No,
Now,
that's
again,
what I did.
you have over 30, what the last stats from 2021, 2022 is over 31,000 applications at the Landlord and Tenant Board for non-payment rent. And the next one is L2 applications, which could be a fluctuation of obviously N5s and N12s, but
Yeah,
you can see more and more based on people's comments within the group and of course my phone calls, just trying to get access to their homes to move into it, or trying to just sell it because it's not financially feasible for them to keep that tenant anymore. And now they think it's extortion. So this is the concept where you can go to your tenant
yeah,
and say, "Hey, tenant, everything has increased. I want, could you potentially work with me and pay X amount above the 2.5%?" They go, "No, it's 2.5%." So he's like, "Okay, as a landlord, I'm going to say you don't want to pay more. I'm going to have to
yeah,
sell the place, or I'm going to have to move into the place." Now it's going to be, oh, it's a bad faith eviction because you tried to get more money for rent
yeah,
and then
yeah.
you
You
applied
extorted
for the
me.
N12.
Yeah, no.
That's what people are getting caught in right now, but not being able to argue, hey, no, this is me trying to analyze my business here and understanding that it's not feasible. So I need to do either A or I have to do B. This
Yeah,
and that's and these adjudicators are feeding into that frenzy that's happening at the board.
yeah. No, it's the same. I've seen it many times where, people are like, or even they go and they do their checks, to see, how the property is. Are there any leaks? Are there any, they check their fire alarms, they check everything,
Mhm.
and they see that a place is starting to look pretty worn, like hard lived in, and there's damage and stuff like that. And then when you talk to the tenants, they get all upset. You're harassing me, especially if there's some, arrears in rent. You can't even ask your tenant because then they take you to the board for harassment. So it becomes this cycle of craziness. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like, we really can't do anything. Like, what are we not supposed? If I don't pay my bills, I know they're going to start calling me.
Yeah.
How is that do I tell them they're harassing me? Like, they're not supposed to call me?
Well, we have so many people who are in need of this board. It hasn't kept up with the demand, especially with rental units being created over the year. We look at the background of these adjudicators that have that social justice tribunal experience, really hammering in on landlords. Some people
Yeah.
find that they're more hard on the case when it's being represented. What's your feel on that? Where if it was the landlord was represented versus they're representing themselves.
Um, I find that they're hard on the landlord anyway. So if there's any way that they can I've seen adjudicators go through the application to see if there's any mistakes, first of all. If it is, pitch it out.
Hmm.
That's the first thing. Second thing I've seen is, and they're not helpful. Like, they can't make amendments. They can't amend an I know certain applications can't be amended, but let's just say this one is. They're not even helping them out. Depending on who the representative is, if there is, I know that they get very frustrated if there's poor witness prep.
Hmm.
Um, I have watched witnesses go on and tell stories upon stories and not stick to the facts,
And the
uh,
adjudicator lets them talk.
and lets them. Yeah.
And then when
I've
they're
just
done
seen, I've,
talking, then they'll say, well, it's not really relevant.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But there are some. Um, I know that adjudicated priest is very good in keeping them on track. Oh, sorry, that's not relevant. Or, you're here to ask questions. If they're self-representing, you can ask questions. This is not you're not giving testimony right now.
Hmm.
Like, she's pretty good at keeping them on track. There's others as well. Um, but it's, yeah, I personally, I would never do, even though I've done arbitrations with the Ministry of Labor for the unions. I've done that. And so I'm pretty well versed on how to get around there and how to get my case heard and how to present it, how to prep it, all that stuff. But even so, you know what? It's too much. You have too much emotionally invested, especially if there's money at stake. I would rather leave it to a competent paralegal. But I'm not saying just any paralegal. I think you have to really do your due diligence with paralegals as well.
Oh yeah. Some of them have let things slide. It's like, why are you letting that slide? Or I have had a
Yeah.
paralegals like, sorry, this just showed up on my lap this morning. So just bear with me here. It's like, oh my God. Like if and then
Yeah.
and the adjudicator was asking if they felt that the notice was properly served, and they said, I feel confident it was. Like, how about you, adjudicator? They're like, oh yeah, we can actually stand this down if you're not secure on this. I'm like, what is going
Yeah.
on? Like, it
Yeah.
has to be black and white. It has to be black and white. We got to look at, even for filing at the Landlord and Tenant Board is $186 filing fee, but in Newfoundland to file at the Landlord and Tenant Board it's $20. You know, why such a big increase? And they're providing the same type of dispute resolution, probably better for $20. But how are they not able to produce what we're paying for?
It's just such a mismanaged system, and they keep trying to tweak it, and really they need to just start again. They
Yeah,
just need to scrap the whole thing and start again because it is so broken that no crazy glue is going to help this. No crazy is going to help this. Like, it's horrible. It's
it
horrible.
it was great that we liked the fact that they were going online before COVID. COVID just
Yeah.
helped them speed it up, but a lot of it now actually has to be through written. There's lots of stuff that can be just through the mail. They have, so much time to respond back or to submit something into the portal. They've got that information that's there. That just for filing two applications and wanting both of them to be heard at the same time, it delays the hearing process
It does.
even more so, because they want you to file separately. Why? Because it's more money for the
More
Landlord and
money.
Tenant Board. $6.5 million to hire another 40 more adjudicators. Do we really need that many adjudicators, or do we need to really sit back and analyze what their job is and what they're doing and how they're doing it? There shouldn't be a free for all. It's like literally you have 10 minutes for your opening. You have 10 minutes for your opening. Here's now 10 minutes for closing. You have to streamline these type of approaches, especially if they don't have the manpower to even keep up. And 30 to 60 days from your hearing is what they've given themselves to get you that order. So
Yeah.
they have a lot of problems that they've created by themselves, and I don't know why they're not trying to address it in the manner that, because there's the question here that it says, what happened to the screening applications from preliminary issues with the submitted instead of waiting for the hearing? That still somewhat happens. We got a hearing, it was like, oh, there's no signature on the certificate of service, and so they just tell you to refile that, and they're analyzing that. But I don't think they have the manpower to go through all of these applications
No.
to to identify the errors that are out there. Which brings me to my next comment. There's a company that I was just speaking with yesterday. They created something, and I'm
Oh,
excited to they're going to be at the conference highlighting what they've created, and it's something that the landlord and tenant board needed. They need what these people are giving to them. So I'm excited to showcase that to the members there, because we're all about different products and different tools to try to help us navigate through this, but also give the feedback to the landlord and tenant board to say, this is what you need to do. This is the type of people that you need to be having to look at these type of applications. Now, which adjudicator do you feel is like very balanced, very fair approached?
oh my. There's a few. I think it's BRCK, Burke.
Mm-hmm.
He's very good. I like him.
We had Lundy. I don't know if Lundy's still around.
You know what? I don't know because most of the time they're gone and we don't know until months later they're gone. And then you start seeing all the de novo hearings being, done on like Friday afternoons or no, sorry, there's no Friday afternoons hearing. Please, it's a half day government.
There were supposed to be
Um,
evening and weekends hearings, but I don't know
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
what
Mm-hmm.
happened to those. That's what they were trying.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't know
Yeah.
too, when you have your hearing, and let's say you didn't get your order in 30 to 60 days, if your adjudicator is now not there anymore, they want you back for a new hearing because they can't take the recording and issue the order.
Yeah, it's a whole new it's called a de novo hearing, and I've noticed that they usually do them on Fridays. And Friday's been like half a day. It's sad to see what actually happens on Fridays. It's I
So
mean,
we'll
it's
make
a
sure we
start for the weekend, but yeah,
Today's
it's
Friday.
half a
We should
day.
have had a post. So we'll have to catch everybody up in the group now on Friday, get some links up. And guys, like sit there, watch it if you can. Just pay attention to how you can better prepare yourself to be speaking, prepare your witnesses that you have there in order to watch what happens. Some people don't know that these links are even available to be watched and that they're being watched by other people.
Absolutely. No, we my one of my friends and I started watching it because we're both getting out of it, and we started watching it. Um, oh my gosh, like a year when they started putting them online, hit and miss, but for a year, we were watching them like 4 or 5 days a week. Now, mind you, I was floating in the pool doing it with my earbuds on. So I wasn't really watching them, I was listening to them.
You greedy
Uh,
past landlord listening to
I
this.
know.
Cool. What's wrong with you?
I was still a landlord then. But yeah, and then in May, when my tenants left, and I looked at how it looked, and if I had the energy to cry, I probably would have, but I didn't.
Mm,
And I just started, you know, tearing stuff out, and that was a brand new reno 5 years ago
no.
that they received. And it sounds like a lot of money when you put $150,000 into a reno, but that's not really a lot of money.
Yeah, I think we did like 70 on our one, and just the turnover of flooring and painting and appliances, it was like 15,000, right? So like when you realize that these people are sitting at the landlord and tenant board, not only dealing with the aftermath of not having a tenant pay rent, but the damages that is coming out, and the tenant had locked out the landlord or changed the locks. But when you
Yeah.
get to hear these stories of, this poor landlord who has, their son who's also on the property wanting to move in, and he's struggling because he's self-employed, so he's not getting picked up by private landlords for his own
Yeah.
place. He actually he actually owns a company. There was his business that was in this property as well. But the tenants were able to get that turned around, and he can't even get access to his own property anymore. Like,
Jesus. Yeah.
you can't force someone to stay a landlord forever, but again, it's going to be at the luck of the draw and who you get as an adjudicator. But there needs to be some type of consistency, and I wish a lot of our paralegals can speak out against what's happening at the landlord and tenant board, because they
Hmm.
see it, they live it, but they have their code of conduct.
Yeah, that's a delicate balance because, they don't want to be reprimanded, even if it's underhanded and not out in the open, by these adjudicators if they
Yeah,
speak out. So, I mean, yeah.
I want you guys to do me
Uh,
a favor, who's listening. If you've had a hearing or you're listening to a hearing, I want to know who these adjudicators are, because they have all their bios right up on the website. I like to figure out if there's some kind of consistency with the way that they rule. But they're in the public eye now. They're in public office as well. So we want to kind of make sure that we hold them accountable at some way or form. And it's great that people are able to upload their judgments. They're able to report their rent payments, the unpaid
Yeah.
rent and unpaid utilities to front lobby. Getting it on that person's Equifax credit report is key to us trying to avoid the landlord and tenant board at all costs. And that's why it's sad to see that Cash for Keys has made it. Used to be that little, hey, offer them 1 or 2 months rent, and then once you had to offer them that 1 month's rent to take possession, it didn't just go from 1 month, it went to 2, 3, 4. People were offered crazy amount of money, and they're just like, no, we want more. And now they're
Yeah.
like, okay, you know what? We're not. This lady had tagged me on TikTok and said she had offered her tenant $9,000 and they wanted more. So she's like, you know what? Now I'm going to move into it. And
Yep.
she finally got possession, but she's now on TikTok explaining to anyone who's interested in investing into Ontario, stay away from this place with a 10-foot pole. And how is that going to be attractive to our elected officials in our province to be like, yeah, we need 1.5 million homes by 2031? And it's like, who's going to do it? You think taxpayers are going to be able to come up with that many? And the developers, what are they building for if the private sector is not going to be able to buy and rent out for the amount of money that they need?
Yeah. No, I was going to put in one of those laneway homes, those garden suites, because my property in Hamilton is like approved for that, and just the hassle from the I have beautiful architecture pictures. I had an architect do everything. But the building permits is a nightmare in Hamilton.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I'm probably going to frame them one day and hang them on my wall and get some use out of them.
People go for the stress of just getting the development going.
Yeah.
To find out there's a stress of like being the landlord, then to be out of the landlord game. Like, we're here to try to make it, fair and balanced, but what's happening is that the professional tenants that are out there are ruining it for the good ones. They're ruining it
Yeah.
for the good landlords. Like, we know there's bad landlords out there, but if you keep backlogging the landlord and tenant board with non-payment of rent, and you fighting an N12 eviction because the landlord needs to move into it or their family members move into it. Look at what society has done. Like, normally your kids are growing up, they're out of the house, they're going to go rent somewhere else. But now the rents have skyrocketed so high that it makes sense for them to rent to their children than it is to rent to the private market.
Even if they have their own house. I watched one case where they had a house. It was in Toronto, very nice area. House was up for sale for $1.5 million. House had sold, and across the street they owned a triplex, and they were doing an N12, one for the daughter who was coming back from university. So one unit for the daughter. She was finishing university in another province, moving back to Toronto. Another one for a son who is he has like a contracting business. So he does like renovations and stuff. And
Mm.
he's, because being self-employed was extremely hard to get his own place. So they figure, you know what, he can live there for, I don't know, 2 to 5 years, save some money, and then buy his own place maybe. And then they would move into the bigger unit because they were downsizing because he was retiring, and they were all fighting it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a gentleman that reached out to me. He had a heating and cooling situation happening. It was a heating situation. The tenant upstairs was the one that was in control of it. The basement units are always seems to be a bit tad colder. So we always tell our landlords, like, put that electric baseboard heater in just to have that backup, just in case it
Yeah.
does not meet the standards of what's needed. The landlord and their contractor was constantly kind of doing the 24-hour written notices to go in to make sure that they're addressing the concern that they had. But the adjudicator ruled that the landlord had to pay $14,500
For what?
for the ruining the enjoyment of the tenant and for harassment. That was considered harassment, constantly going back to address their issues.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
The
Wow.
it's This is why it became a nightmare for so many. And it's like,
Yeah.
how much more is the private housing sector going to actually put up with? But at the same
Yeah.
time, they're marketing to the people who are going to be potentially homeowners. That's the only way for them to try to get to weed out the bad tenants that are out there abusing this system and the economy. Like, look at the price of food. Like, oh my God. Like,
Exactly.
I haven't had a steak in so long.
I can't say that, but I mean, it's still,
You're like, you're
you
eating
know,
steak where's how much is the steak in Mexico, Michele?
I don't know. You can get a nice steak. It's not as expensive as Canada, but the food pricing, I don't know how Mexicans afford food. I mean, they must eat a lot of rice and beans because you got to fill up somehow.
Yeah.
But still, like even things in Mexico are not as cheap as they were before. To rent a decent apartment, you're looking at $1,200.
Mm.
So people go, "Oh, that's not too bad." Yeah, but like you've got probably about another 120 a month, maybe $100 a month in AC costs.
What's the
You
eviction process in Mexico?
What's the
Eviction process.
Depends. It's a little bit different state to state, but generally what you do is it's a different you have a rental contract. It goes by the year. So you agree on a price. Let's say it's $1,000. It's for the year. And then you decide whether you want to renew. Now, if you don't like your tenants, then you increase your rent
It's like
to the
Alberta.
point where they can't afford it or whatever. And the
Mhm.
evictions are pretty quick from what I hear.
Only in Ontario is where you have a fixed lease that only protects the tenant. So many landlords are getting into the fixed lease, and it's like, don't even just do month to month. It's gonna
Right
you
away.
in yourself. You leave so much open availability. You can do the NA applications. You can sell that property if you want to. You're not, more tenants are asking for more fixed term leases. But in Alberta, it's like, hey, after the year, you look at your finances. This is how much rent's going to go up. I'm giving you the breakdown of how it's going to go up. Do you agree to this? Yes. Then we'll renew. And if you don't, then I'm giving you notice that you have to leave. Why is it in Ontario where they are forcing you to keep that tenant and controlling you how much you can raise that rent? And the tenant activists are trying to go further with the rent control in between tenancies. And I think that's where Kathleen Wynne was going with the the
Yes.
standard lease that we have.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's out of the woods yet, but we have a switch in politics that people need to get more heavily involved with who your politicians are, because right now we're conservative, and I got a funny feeling it's going to go red if and that's going to be bad. You think you're
Yeah.
bad now with the conservatives, just wait to see how it's going to go liberal with Bonnie Crombie. And
Well, they've put in the vacancy tax for homes.
because landlords came out publicly and said, I'd rather leave my rental unit empty instead of dealing with the landlord and tenant board.
I'm one of those, and I did it, and it is cheaper because right now, my last tenants that left always paid their rent. I'm not going to say they didn't.
Mhm.
However, I'm about 12K into repairs and maintenance, having done a lot of it myself, keeping the cost down. And that was a little scared straight program for me that anybody please slap the stupid out of me if I ever decide to rent this as a rental, like as a, you know what I mean? Like as a tenancy. Like, please don't ever, if don't ever let me talk about this in the future because just come over and just slap it. Just slap the stupid out of me because I don't ever want to be held hostage like that. It is just such a cartel.
They're
Like
going,
who's forced ever forever? Like you're a landlord forever,
yeah.
and forever is a mighty long time. When a 93-year-old is asking the board, please, like I need to sell this place. They cannot live on their own anymore. There shouldn't be that they have to beg another entity, can I please evict my tenants? Not because
Mhm.
they were bad tenants, but just because they have to sell it and pay for their stay,
There was a
because they can't live on their own.
there was a lady in the States. She had to move back to Canada for health reasons. She's took over possession, was granted the eviction to get into her home. But after 2 ambulance trips to her property, because she wasn't doing good for her health, they actually had to sell the house and put her in a home. And because they sold the house on the 11th month of her living there, The tenant had applied to the board as a bad faith eviction on the proof to say that there was no evidence that the landlord had family there or people over, even though it was through COVID and nobody was allowed to be over. But the adjudicator had ruled that they had to pay the tenant $12,000.
See, I would fight that. I
And
would
then
fight it.
and then you know what, how and then like, what are you going to do? Like, you have to pay. If you're at a fine, then if you get fined, you have to pay that fine before you can file even more applications at the board. But tenants, on the other hand, can
There's
completely
nothing.
go through multiple landlords and still have the same, like, it's like a brand new, these adjudicators probably see the same tenant going through multiple landlords, but they don't hold them to an account. It's technically fraud.
It is. And you know what? When they used to be in person, and I used to like going and sitting in on them, I would always have like a briefcase with an empty file folder, and nobody ever said anything. And I just go to the back and, you look on the docket and be like, oh, I recognize some of these names, right? But
Yeah.
you go in and it was just over and over. You see, like when you go often enough, because they were only 2 days a week in Hamilton at that time.
Mm.
And when you go often enough, you see the same ones over and over. And now when they have it, like you could have a hearing from someone in Toronto, and then you could have someone in North Bay, and then there's another one in Aurelia, and then there's another one in Ottawa. Like they could all be on the same docket. So you don't see that same clientele coming through for
Well,
non-payment, and people were out quicker too, right?
I had one bad tenant. Was a good tenant gone bad. They got split up. I got with the husband. I got the husband that, had some issues, and it took 7 months way back when. And when we had to go to the board, I was pregnant at the time, and we're inside of a community arena where people will be going skating. No seating while you're waiting for check-ins. You finally get a seat, and luckily, after the uncontested matters were presented, then they finally got to me just because I was pregnant. I'm like, thank you.
Oh my God.
But and then talking to the security guard, and he said the same thing. He's like, you'd be surprised of how many people I see here just with a different landlord each and every time. And because the landlords are not doing their part and not being able to know that you can report it to the credit bureaus now. Like, I had a question here, front lobby fees. So it's a yearly fee that they have that you can and you can report up to 20 current leases, and then you can report as a former tenant, and that's like $199, I believe, for a former tenant, and that can go back 6 years. Now, some people are like, oh, they already got bad credit, I'm not going to spend my money on doing it.
Do it anyway.
It
Do
has
it anyway.
it's a way for you to know that there's repercussions for it, and you're actually being able to at least save a couple of landlords. Like, we have to be a part of this community, just like the Acorn Tenant Union. They're saying that they got 140,000 members. That's why these elected officials are very potent into, what do you guys have to say? We want to listen. Well, we have a lot of power. We just have to get ourselves off of social and really dive deep into being a collective organization that can get these proper stats of how many landlords we have, how many rental units we represent. And most importantly, if you're taking a rental unit off of the market, I want to know about it. These are the stats that these elected officials are asking me all the time. Like, oh, how many rental units have left? It's like, I can show you post after post after post, but that's not going to really catch your interest. We need to have some better stats that, we can influence our elected officials. And hey, we're voters too. And we could probably help our tenants, vote in a way, because we do have really good tenants out there. Even for all of mine, like they're great. They're keeping the peace. They pay their rent on time. But if they ever had to leave going elsewhere, it's going to be very hard. It's challenging. Even people with really good credit, really good jobs are struggling to find housing. And now the homeowners who no longer could afford their home, they're now pushed into the rental industry. I don't think any of these elected officials know what hit them. They just took part in AMO, the Association Municipalities Association organization. So it's like they brought all the municipalities and their leaders and the elected officials, and they're talking about how they can build more homes, build them quicker. And it's like, you know what you missed? Yeah, the private housing.
Who's going to pay for them? Who's
Yeah,
going to pay for them?
They can't do it. We got a 10% increase in our property taxes coming for the region of Waterloo. Like,
Oh,
you guys don't even think that, you're stretching everybody else into being broke, or are you taking out the middle
yeah.
class? Like, what's your mission here? What's your end game? So I'm hoping to keep teaching our landlords how to avoid these tenants that are out there looking to prey on these small housing providers, because we are 70%, over 70% of the housing stock, and we're the backbone, because no one's
Yeah.
going to be able, our government can't do it. There's a 12-year waiting list in the region of Waterloo, and it's 22 years in Mississauga to wait for
Yeah.
government housing. So our tenant groups could be like, oh, you greedy little landlords, you need to get out of the business. You don't provide nothing. I'm like, you want to see what life would be like if the landlords didn't provide a unit that your income or your credit can't get?
No, even the garden suite, that everybody's talking about, like, oh, the all that stuff. I seriously was into it, and I had costed it out. It was about 275,000 to build a small unit, 2 bedrooms, nothing major, nothing big.
Mm.
275,000 before COVID. But
Mm-hmm.
the permits took forever, then they changed their mind, then they didn't allow it. And you know what I did? I said, this was a couple of years before COVID. I said, I went to the building department. I had a meeting with them in Hamilton, and I said to them, you win. I'm not going to build now, because they were dying for people to build and provide these additional units.
Yeah.
And I said, you win. I'm not building now. Well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm buying pre-construction. Bought a pre-construction place, made over 200,000 on it. I did nothing
That
other
one's
than
in, is it
plunk my deposit down.
Mexico?
No, 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 in Ontario.
Oh, in
And I
Ontario.
sold and I sold it during COVID. I made over $200,000 on it. Do you
I
think
just
my garden suite would have made that?
I
Nope.
just had someone say that they did a pre-construction and they got the property, but they're forbidding them from renting the unit out for, I think, a
During
year.
occupation, probably,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
will take which yes. But I didn't rent it out. I left it as my primary residence,
Mm.
and I just yeah, I just decided, you know what? Good enough. I don't need to build any more units, and
Still a
that's what I did.
policy. Still a policy that that could be a rental for someone, but they've created that environment where you now have to
Yeah,
let that place sit empty, or it's got to be your primary residence, and
yeah,
here you're losing out.
yeah. Or, I would have just paid the vacancy tax, whatever on it. It's just they're not even willing to work with us. I've
No,
had
there's
friends I've had friends in Hamilton that have bought places, tried to renovate them, tried to duplex them, and they get such a hassle from Hamilton, from anything Hamilton, City of Hamilton related, that they've just said, "You know what? I just sold it. Let somebody else fight them. I'm tired of sitting in their office." This is pre-COVID. "I'm tired of sitting there wasting my day trying to meet with somebody."
Yeah. They're obviously they're doing it for, I don't know if the nonprofit organizations are the ones coming to the rescue, because I know they just approved 9,300 units in Kitchener on the promise that so many units are going to be considered affordable. They probably got their development fees waived for this, but the amount of money that they're going to be making on the non rent controlled units, that's going to drive a significant change and they just had the wool pulled over our eyes thinking, yeah, we have a lot of units now. It's like, and how much? And like, are you looking
Mhm.
at how much these other units, the market rent units, are going to be in sacrifice of develop with these fees being waived? It's a recipe for, and you
Yeah.
know what, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting different results. And all of these elected officials who have no clue with what it's like. And most of them, as the MPs, are even landlords themselves. So a lot of them probably have this conflict of interest for them to even tune in. But remember, Trudeau says not his job for housing, even though he made a whole bunch of promises about what he's going to do to make housing affordable. And even Pierre coming out and talking about his ways to making housing and getting the gatekeepers out of the way, which is great for the building factor. But what about that supply? Like, well, how much is our cost to actually
Yeah.
get these rental units created? You expect us to spend thousands and millions of dollars and then rent out the unit for $1,000? Like, the numbers need to make sense. But they rather just keep these nonprofit organizations going, all these associations that are being created to help tenants fine accommodations. Like we have our local shelter who is hired someone to recruit landlords to have the people who are looking for housing to adopt them into their program, where they're going to guarantee the rent for a room to $1,000 and a one bedroom for $1,300. And I'm like,
Yes.
you know,
Yes,
rental
I've been approached, not by Waterloo, but I've been approached many times.
and I said, you're
Yes.
spinning your wheel. We just wasted money on just hiring you
Mhm.
to do something that you don't have an end goal. There's no goal in mind. I'm like, can you start working like your hat and advocate for us to work with you? Because in order for us to work with you, we need a lot more than, you know, a promise of $1,300 when we can clearly get $1,700 for it. You know, they also talk about not going through the RTA. Well, if we go through the city's dispute process, the tenants can still apply to the board for whether the act applies, which still delays that eviction process. So you always got to pay attention to these fine the fine print to these contracts.
Absolutely.
You
I,
know
I
what?
actually had a lawyer friend of mine tell me, he said, I get it now, Michelle, because I've been in government a little longer than he has, but
Mhm.
he actually works for the government. He says, I get it now. He says, I have everybody constantly on my bum every day. And he said, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I do, it's always still a sum zero game. Any level of government that he's worked in,
Everything they touch, it doesn't flow nicely. It's
nothing.
like we need to ask for Steve Clark to step down as the minister. We need Doug Downey to be repositioned with someone that can get a handle of what's happening with the Landlord and Tenant Board, because it's wasted money. It's taxpayers' money
Mhm.
that's being wasted on those 40,000. People might think, "Yay, it's good." No, it's not. We can do it more efficiently if we just had the right players at the table. They used to have a task force at the Landlord and Tenant Board, so we would advocate again to have that
Yeah.
with the public sector, the stakeholders. We haven't had a meeting since our last chair has left, so it's a little disheartening to see who has taken over. They're not really engaging within the private housing sector to give them the feedback of what they're doing and how it's happening. But hey, call upon the privatization of the Landlord and Tenant Board, or a two-tier
Yeah.
system, something where if I can't wait for the government one, I do have the option to pay a little bit higher of a price and apply to the privatized one, where we can actually hold them accountable. You know, a lot of people are just looking for that accountability. They certainly leave landlords to be held accountable. Obviously, the tenants are able to get away with it. You know, fraudulently taking advantage of landlords extorting them just to gain access
Yeah.
to their rental properties. We need better training at the Landlord and Tenant Board for these adjudicators, something that's more streamlined approach and consistent with their rulings, so we can kind of see where a hearing would go. And same with the tenants, they can kind of see where a hearing could end up or their order could end up. And we need a generic order, something very simple like Newfoundland's, like one pager. You know, you don't need to captivate everything that happened in the hearing. You just got to go based on the evidence that was presented. This is your ruling.
Yeah. No, and I know everybody was really hoping that the ombudsman report was
Ah,
really going to help us. And and I told everybody, I
no,
said,
no,
I don't understand. I'm really sorry to be Debbie Downer, but it's not
we
an
should be
enforcement agency.
we got to be
Like,
drinking on this one. 61
oh,
recommendation. That tells you how messed up the Landlord and Tenant Board really is, of 61 recommendations, and our elected officials saying that they're looking at the recommendations, looking at adapting these type of things, but don't keep
no,
that.
no.
At least it's just that voice, and still with their 61 recommendations being put out there, obviously changes, small changes happening at the board. Continue to write your complaints where you had that hearing and it got adjourned and you still haven't had your hearing date. They're not even following their proper protocol. Or when an
Mm-mm.
adjudicator is reversing another adjudicator's hearing when they had no clue what had happened throughout that initial hearing, but decided to reverse that eviction. You know, there's lots of different ways that we can do it. We just have to have that same advocating voice from all members saying it, because right now they're
Yeah.
too panicked, like this is what's going on. We need them to know how to do it. I was lucky enough that there was a gentleman that was waiting since July 17th to get his new hearing. Well, I was able to, connect him with some of the people at the Ministry of Housing as well as at the Landlord and Tenant Board. I didn't get anything from the first batch of emails from the Landlord and Tenant Board until I incorporated the Minister of Housing. And then they got 2 emails from the Landlord and Tenant Board this morning, and he just sent it last night. So it was like, at least I saved one today. This is what it's about when I'm still advocating. It may seem like we're spinning our wheels, but I am in the back talking to landlords on the phone. I want to have that, like, that McDonald symbol, like
McDonald's with the bat channel up.
Yeah, like
put the light on.
And that's why it's like having these conferences and bringing to light to these elected officials to say, listen, we're gathering, we're going to tell each other how we're going to be doing tenant screening. So many people can avoid this. Our adjudicator, I'll announce it here. We have our lawyer who is giving out addendums to all of the attendees at the Ontario Landlords Watch Conference on October 28th, so that we can better prepare you as you're trying to argue your case and making sure you have your addendum. Standard lease is doing nothing for you. We have to make sure that you have everything included to protect you. We have the programs that are going to be coming out, especially that other company that seems to be liking being liked by the Landlord and Tenant Board. So they like what they have. Now they want to see our feedback on it. So I'm looking forward to pronouncing that there and help everyone who's dealing with a potential disruptive tenant. Like, we're going to be able to say, this is what you got to do to better protect yourself. I know they can get underneath your skin, but don't come off all hot-headed because they got the camera rolling, they have the audio going. You got to keep yourself completely cool and collective. Bill 97 is rolling out. There's going to be changes that we need to do as landlords in order to adapt to Bill 97, especially for renovations and especially for the mandatory payment plan. So walking our landlords through that payment plan and how they should be documenting. Everything is about document.
Yeah.
Because we have to, it's the way you write to your tenant is the way that you would write to an adjudicator. So take that in perspective, keep your emotions down on it. And our forms, we're walking everyone through the forms, how to better prepare yourself for the Landlord and Tenant Board hearing so that you're not there talking in circles and having the adjudicator to cut you off at the end to say that's not relevant.
or we're out of time. Yeah,
Or
we have to reschedule. Yeah, we couldn't get 28 things heard on the docket today. God.
And it's all about, it's our market. Like, you see an $1,800 rental unit plus utilities having 118 inquiries on this. On this unit. Now, the rental lab probably have done something, but these people who were coming to check out on this application, on this rental unit, they were qualified. I wish I had more units available to take the people who were applying for this place. But in order to do that, we have to still go through each and every step of that tenant screening process. And we're going to teach you in a very unique way that we don't teach you on a Facebook Live.
And I think that's the toughest part, because we don't really hate tenants. We like tenants because, like, when you have that great, when you have that great relationship, that's what you want, right? So those are really the ones that are getting hurt right now.
Yeah.
By all this non-payment of rent and really souring a lot of landlords just by leaving.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are really being hurt right now.
And some of these tenants too, like, I've seen some groups where they're happy to pay more to stay in their unit because they know it's a relationship, and they're have those level head people that you can work with. But when you have tenant unions and these professional tenants trying to guide them into fighting it and being hostile with their landlord, that's why we're trying to change the name housing provider, just so it doesn't show private housing provider, not just housing provider, because we don't work for the government. But we need to be respected as a business, and we need to stand up for this industry, because you can go to any conference that you want and learn how to build your portfolio and get into this type of business and this BRRRR or this short-term rentals. But if you don't do your tenant screening and know the act and advocate for this industry, your numbers are not going to make sense regardless.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Last question here. They said, "Isn't Downey gone from government cabinet?" No, unfortunately, he's still the attorney general. So obviously, we have multiple levels of government that we have to go through. It's not just Steve Clark. It's not just his assistant. It's Doug Downey. Then you need to get, potentially get a member to get like a private member's bill of what we're recommending, which we're going to talk about that at the conference as well. And we're creating a committee. I want everyone who is, ready to roll up their sleeves and advocate. I want to teach you what I'm doing, how we're doing it. We're going to work together as a team. So we're going to create a committee that is going to take this advocacy efforts to the next level, because we have our tenant, unions talking about rent strikes, and they're doing it to overload the Landlord and Tenant Board again with, another 300 applications for non-payment of rent. So we need to be able to give everybody, but most importantly is to be supportive with one another. I know there's a lot of comments that it seem like, oh, you should know that, but they really don't. So try to be kind to one another within the group and not so hostile. And honestly, there's some comments that are in the group that, that it sucks that they're speaking truth. But I have to let people, get things off their chest.
Sure.
It's about bad advice, then yes, we're going to step in and be like, okay, that's something that can get the landlord into some hot water here. Just about, locking people out and just closing the door. Like, I know we want to, I know we do, but you can't be, don't give any advice that really can put that landlord in some serious hot water and make their life living hell for the next 2 years, just because of dealing with this one professional tenant that just knows how to work the system. I'm going to put the comments here in the comments. I'm going to put the event link for the conference coming up. We have our early bird pricing now for September 1st, just because you guys are going to get the little bit of benefit there, because no one knows of the guest speakers yet either. So I'm keeping on that one on the hush hush until after September 1st. Definitely got some powerhouse speakers that are coming, people who have been in the industry for quite some time. They're going to give you the education that, not everybody can give you just in the groups in itself, and better prepare you to manage these properties professionally in whatever format, if it's from the tenant screening to representing yourself at the Landlord and Tenant Board. How to deal with that difficult tenant, and yours truly educating the advocacy efforts that we all need to be pitching in on. If not, it's more coming, and we have to be prepared, because landlord licensing is spreading like wildfire. We have our plans in place and how to fight back on it. And if it does get implemented in your city, we'll teach you what you need to do and how you can try to incorporate an increase on the rent because of it. So lots of information, too much to really cover. It's going to be from 1 o'clock till 9 o'clock. Long day, but don't worry, I'm feeding you. We got a buffet. We're having some games and prizes. Put your dancing shoes on if you want. We're going to have a DJ as well, and make sure you could just have a good time, because you guys, we work hard. We get to play hard. We provide a service that is desperately needed to our country. And today we want to be able to be recognized as such, or it's going to get worse. And I think everyone's feeling that now. And every elected official says the worst is yet to come. And it's true. The mass immigration that's happening, the shelters are overfull right now in the summer. You hate to see what's happening in the spring. And unfortunately, like, our city was just happy that they cleared away one encampment, because they were finally able to place those people into another home or a shelter. So they finally cleaned up this parking lot that tents and fires and people throwing machetes at each other. It's getting out of hand, and we also need to be caring about that as taxpayers, because that's coming on your taxpayers to clean up after that too. So we have to hold our elected officials accountable and give them these out of box thinking ideas how to address this housing crisis, and don't bend until they start giving us, some of these regulations and rules that need to be changed. We need the proper tools in our toolbox if they do want to partner with us.
Absolutely. I can't wait for the conference. It's going to be so good. I'll be there.
Are you going to have steak there?
No, I said I'll be there. I can't wait. No, we don't need steak.
I know. It's like, I would love a steak. We got chicken. We definitely have chicken. We have about 10 different items on the menu for everyone to choose from. If you don't want the chicken, we do have eggplant So if you want an eggplant, I can certainly arrange that for you. This is actually the reception. This place is where I had my wedding reception. And I know the food is good. Oh my God, the food was crazy when we got married in 2010. So I know they can cook a good meal for you guys. So I,
Perfect.
I want to leave you with your minds full and your bellies. So come out, support our advocacy efforts, network with your fellow landlords, property managers, and real estate agents. Tell this to your real estate agents. I know they get a lot of slack in our group, based on them doing their tenant screening or giving the wrong advice when the landlord's just trying to sell their rental property and putting it in offers. Like, we really need to get our elected our real estate agents very familiar with this industry from the advocacy efforts and the tenant management. I know that they're the first people who are connecting to our landlords. Let's get them the information that they need in order to better represent their clients. So I'm excited to welcome them to this year's conference as well. And I got a few people working on some elected officials coming. So if they do come, we're going to be calm, guys. I know we're pissed off half of the time, but this is about bringing them the solutions, right? We're done venting. They know the problems. They get phone calls all the time. We now need to bring these solutions that mean to be practical, and that is going to work with what we can do, what other social agencies are out there, making them run efficiently, and also talking about government housing in itself, and how that's having some issues and needs to be fine-tuned, because those units are being taken up by people that can be in the private housing sector, but unfortunately they don't give them an out. They keep them trapped and needing to be in government housing, and we need people who with more complex issues to be in there as well. So it's a whole mess, guys. It's like, here's the iceberg, and underneath it is so many other issues. We need to highlight that to our elected officials, but don't stay quiet. And I know so many people are being quiet because they don't want it to backlash on them, or it's based on what they do. They're, if you have a situation, you want to do it, and you want to post it anonymously, give me a call, let me know. I understand that part, but we have to do more, or it's going to get a lot worse for us. So we're looking forward to telling you what that's going to be about. And Michelle's going to be there.
I'll be there.
We have Susan. She's bringing the rum.
All right. I'll see if I can bring some tequila.
Oh man, the tequila rose.
No, just the 1800 or some good Don Julio.
Well, we got the bar there too. We have a cash bar there. The drinks are like $7
Oh, perfect.
for the alcoholic drinks. So I gotta make sure we have a good time after 9, because we're the night will be young, guys.
Okay. I'll bring a designated driver. I'll bring a designated driver.
Don't worry, I got the husband for that, and I got a minivan too. So
oh God,
I can take you guys in, no problem. But yeah, I enjoy doing these events. I love what comes out of these events, the information that comes out from these events, and it's definitely needed more than ever. So I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody and having your support. So let me know if you have any questions about it. And if you are, I think I have 1 or 2 spots left for guest speaking. So if you are interested and you think you have something to offer for the members, definitely give me a shout, and be prepared. We have our sponsors to this event, making it memorable, like a wedding. Oh my God, you should see the cake, Michele. Oh my God. I'm going to show you after. I can't post it yet, guys. It's going to be the grand finale. But let's enjoy ourselves, and let's see what we can do to keep our advocacy momentum high, and just know that we have other plans that we need to do. We just need to do it together and keep helping one another.
Perfect.
Last tip to the viewers who are watching, Michele, what do you got to say to them?
Well, I haven't had a lot of issues with tenants over the years. I've been very fortunate, but I've also done my due diligence. But I would highly recommend, even before you think of making any change in your tenancies, whatever you're doing, I would seriously get a consult with a great paralegal, because it's even important to plan if you're doing whatever. I mean, N4 is pretty straightforward. N8 is pretty straightforward. But if you're doing an N12 or an N13, before you get caught up in well, that's not what they said they were going to do, go get a consult with a paralegal, and then hire that paralegal and listen to them. because you want to keep emotions out of it. If you want to have a successful application, that's the way to do it.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Michele, for taking the time out of your vacation to do this. And I can't wait to see you in October, and definitely introducing you to the rest of the people who have obviously admired you from afar online. So it's going to be a great time for all of us to get together.
Perfect. We can't
Thank
wait to see
everyone
you
for
then.
watching and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Definitely following our Ontario Landlords Watch Facebook page. Please check out our sponsors for this year's conference. We have Front Lobby, obviously, Landlord Credit Bureau, and Single Key in our links. And we have many more that are on their way ready for posting. So please show their support because they're supporting us. I want to thank you all for watching. And then hopefully I can get logging on again soon with another spontaneous Facebook Live with an amazing guest. And until we do this again, happy renting.